Can you see this word file? So we have covered investment appraisal. So the next topic we have to cover is the cost of capital. Okay, the cost of capital can get tested in section C, especially the calculation of WACC. Then we have to discuss about the source of finance, different source of finance, and the capital structure theory, and finally the business valuation. So these are the main areas that we have to cover today. So today I will be discussing about the cost of capital, the source of finance area, the capital structure, and the business valuation part. Okay, so first of all, we'll discuss about the cost of capital. So in the cost of capital section, obviously you can expect a question with regards to calculation of WACC. Okay, so what does it include in the WACC? The WACC will include the cost. For calculating WACC, we have to calculate the cost of each and component in the capital. So the capital may include debt, the capital may include equity, the capital may include preference shares, the capital may include bank loan, non-tradable loans. Everything will come as a part of your capital, right? So when we calculate the WACC of a company, WACC means the weighted average cost of capital of a company. Literally, you have to calculate, first of all, you have to calculate the cost of each and every component of our capital. That is, first of all, the cost of equity and the cost of debt, like that. So we'll discuss initially about the cost of equity. So what are the two different models available for us? The main models available for us to estimate the cost of equity. We have dividend based model, that is dividend valuation model and dividend growth model. And then we have CAPM. So these are the two models we have to estimate the cost of equity, right? Isn't it? Can you reply in the chat? Yes. So what is dividend valuation model or dividend growth model? So here we assume that the company which is issuing an ordinary shareholders, the company who is issuing an ordinary shares, their cost of issuing the share will be the dividend that they have to pay on this share. The dividend that they have to pay on each and every share that they issued will be considered as the cost of that share. So on that basis, they have come up with a formula. So what's the dividend valuation formula? If it's a dividend valuation model, the formula will be D0 by P0. The formula will be D0 by P0. And for dividend growth model, the formula will be D0 into 1 plus G divided by P0 plus G. Isn't it? So these are the two models available for us with respect to dividend valuation model. Are you getting it? Can you reply in the chat?
ഞാനിതപ്പോ കേറി നോക്കാണ്. ഇന്ന് ബിസിനസ് ഫൈനാൻസ് തോന്നുന്നു. അയാൾ കുറെ ടോപ്പിക് എടുക്കുന്നു.
Okay. So we have got two different ways to estimate the cost of an equity. That is either using dividend valuation model, that is D0 by P0, or we can use the growth, that is D0 into 1 plus G by P0 plus G. So these are the two models that we have available, that is based on dividend. So on the base of dividend, these are the two models in which we can calculate the cost of an equity. The first one, we assume that the dividend that we pay every year, it will be constant. There won't be any growth relates to the dividend. So it is D0 by P0. That is, let's say if you are issuing a dividend and the price of the dividend is $10, and the dividend that you are about to receive from that share is, if it is $1, okay, then what's cost of equity there? The cost of equity will be 10%. So that's a very simple assumption that we are making with respect to dividend valuation model. And then in the second situation, they assume that dividend is not constant. Dividend can grow in accordance with how the company grows in the market. Okay, so in accordance with the growth of the company, even the dividend can increase. So on that basis, they have come up with a new formula, that is dividend growth model. So the equation will be D0 into 1 plus G divided by P0 plus G. So these are the two models available for us with respect to dividend valuation, or with on the basis of dividend. These are the two different equations we have available. Is it clear, everyone? But there is a drawback with respect to these two models. In both these scenarios, we assume that dividend, on the basis of dividend, we are estimating the cost, right? So let's say if a company does not pay dividend, in that scenario, does it mean that their cost of capital is zero? The company who does not pay dividend, then how will you estimate the cost of equity? Does it mean that their cost of equity is zero? Can you reply in the chat? In both the scenarios, the D0 is the dividend, okay, the current dividend. So what does it mean by it? If you haven't paid the dividend, can you estimate the cost of equity? If the company haven't paid the dividend, can you estimate the cost of equity using these two equations? Can you reply in the chat, guys? Is it yes or no? No, obviously, if D0 is not there, then how will you calculate the dividend cost of equity, right? So in that scenario, compared to dividend valuation model, we have a better analysis of the cost of equity through CAPM. So we have got another model, that is CAPM, that is capital asset pricing model. That's a model that we follow to calculate the cost of equity, But here we are not considering the dividend. Here, the concept that we follow here is the risk and return relationship. Higher the risk, higher the return. That's a technique that we follow here to estimate the cost of equity. So when we invest in a share, we know that compared to the normal risk that we take when we invest in a normal government securities, we used to get the returns, right? But that return will be very low. At the same time, even the risk associated with those return will be nil, because it's a government security. It's completely risk-free. It's completely a risk-free return if you invest in the government securities. But if you're investing in the shares of a company, will you agree to invest in the shares of a company with the same RF, that is the risk-free return? Or will you expect a more return there when you're investing in shares? Can you reply in the chat? When we invest in the shares, will you expect more return compared to the government securities return? Is it yes or no? Obviously, it's a yes, right? Because we are taking more risk when we are investing in the shares of a company. Okay, so that's the assumption that we are taking here with respect to CAPM model. So we have got an equation for calculating the cost of equity. The cost of equity is equal to RF. RF means the return on the government securities, risk-free return, plus beta. Beta indicates the risk associated with that company. Beta into RM minus RF. Here, the beta indicates the systematic risk of a company. So what do you mean by systematic risk? Here, the beta indicates the systematic risk of a company. Systematic risk means when we are investing in a company, we have to consider two types of risk, the systematic risk and unsystematic risk. Unsystematic risk means the risk which is specific to the company. Let's say one of your major employee can leave the company because it's a kind of pay, let's say you are into research and development area, and obviously in those sections the employee skills is very important. So the risk that one of your employees will leave the company, will be considered as an unsystematic risk because it's a risk specific to the company. Okay, but in, let's say, when there is a recession in the market, or there are some risk due to political changes, or there are some risk with respect to change in interest rate, or currently there is higher inflation in the market. These are risks that will affect almost literally every companies in the market. But the impact of these changes will be different. Let's say if there is recession in the market, it will immediately affect the construction companies immediately, rather than a company who is into food industry. Okay, so but at the end of the day, everyone will get affected by this change in the market rate or change in the interest rate or inflation or recession. So such type of risk are known as systematic risk, because we assume that unsystematic risk is something specific to the company, so that we can diversify it. We can literally reduce it by diversification. Instead of holding shares in one company, we should spread our investment. We should have a diversified portfolio of shares. Then we can literally reduce the unsystematic risk. So when we are investing in the shares of a company, we are only bothered about the systematic risk. Okay, so that systematic risk is explained by the term beta. So if you want to calculate the cost of equity of a company, we have to assess what's the overall risk that they are taking. So they are taking, we have to pay a premium for them. Okay, so RF is something that they get even if they invest in the government securities. So if we pay RF to your shareholders, they won't be happy with that. So RF plus, we have to pay a premium for them. What's a premium? For taking that extra risk in our company. So this premium will be depending upon the risk specific to our company. The risk is beta, the systematic risk. It will be given in the question. Systematic risk multiplied by RM minus RF. That's a premium amount. Rate of market rate of return minus RF. So that premium multiplied by beta. So if the beta increases, RM and RF is always constant. It will be same for every companies in the same industry, but because of the beta will be different for different industries and different companies in the market. So as a result, we can say that cost of equity is equal to RF plus beta into RM minus RF. So this is how we'll get the formula for cost of equity using CAPM model. Is it clear, everyone? So basically, when we are calculating the WACC, we need to estimate the cost of each and every component of our capital structure. So each and every component will include the cost equity, the debt, the bank loan, the non-tradable debts, everything will include in the capital. So let's talk about the equity. So in the equity, we have different models. The dividend valuation models are there, dividend growth model is there, and we have dividend growth CAPM model as well. So we have seen that what's the different equation we have to apply with respect to each and every models. Is it clear? Can you reply in the chat, guys? Is it clear with the three models? Okay, fine. And with respect to this growth calculation, I'm not going in depth to it because it will take time. So I hope you know this formula to calculate growth. How will you calculate growth, guys? Can you just reply in the chat? How will you calculate the growth? We can just discuss it. How will you calculate the growth? What are the two different methods through which we can calculate growth? I hope all of you have attended the classes already, the live sections from any of the faculties, right? So please try to recollect how will you calculate growth. Yeah, the growth can be calculated in two different ways, either using the average method or by using the Jordan's growth model. Okay, so the average method means, let's say you have a dividend of 20 cents in first year, it is 20 cents. Second year, it is 25. Third year, it became 30. Okay, so this is the latest dividend. 30 is your latest dividend. And if you want to calculate the average growth, it will be 30 divided by 20. So the growth is for 2 years, right? It is 2 years growth. So square root of 30 divided by 20 minus 1. That is nth root of d0 by dn minus 1. This is the average method. This is the average method. Is the average method that will follow to calculate the growth. So in order to calculate the growth, we can use the average model. So what is average model? They will be giving a series of dividend. So we have to select the latest dividend and the old dividend because we are taking an average value. Okay, so literally have to take the average, the growth average. So take the latest dividend divided by the old dividend, then check how many years growth is there. So the growth is for, here it is for 2 years. I assume that the total dividends were 3. So in year 1, it was 20, then it became 25, now it is 30. So what's the growth? The growth is for 2 years. Okay, the growth is for 2 years. So it is square root of 30 divided by 20 minus 1. Is it clear, everyone? How to calculate the growth? So what's the growth here? Can you just simply calculate it? What's the growth here? What's the growth here? Root of 30 divided by 20 minus 1. What's the growth here? Can you reply in the chat? What's the growth, guys? Square root of 30 divided by 20 minus 1 is 22%. Okay, fine. The growth will be 22%. So we have one model. This is the one model to calculate the growth. We have got another model as well. That is growth is equal to G is equal to B into R. We have a model that is G is equal to B into R. So what is B here? What is B here? B is the proportion of funds retained by the company. Let's say the current year we have got a return of 25%. Out of the 25%, we have retained 80% and we are planning to distribute another 20%. Okay. So let's say in the current year, if the return is 25% and you are retaining means we are retaining it for your future investment. I am retaining 80%. And remaining 20% of this 25%, I am planning to give it as dividend. So in that scenario, literally with the percentage of fund that we have retained, the company can grow with it, right? The company can grow effectively with the percentage of funds that they have retained. So we assume that whatever the return that we have made in the current year and how much we have retained from that return, we will be using that fund for your future growth. The growth of the company will literally depend upon the percentage of fund that we have retained. So that's how we'll arrive at this formula, that is G is equal to B into R. So basically there are two different ways to calculate the growth. Either we can use the average method or we can use this Jordan's growth model. So this is Jordan's growth model, which is percentage B into R, proportion of fund into return. So just try to do it, check it out. What's the growth here? How much is the growth here? 80% into 25%. How much will be the growth? Yes, the growth will be 20%. Okay, so these are the two different ways in which we can calculate growth. So where B is equal to, what is B? The proportion of fund retained. And what is R? The return on investment. Is the return on investment or return on reinvested funds? Is it clear, guys? So these are the two different ways in which we can calculate growth. So we have learned everything with respect to the calculation of cost of equity, the CAPM model, the dividend valuation model, and the dividend growth model. So is it clear, everyone? If you have any doubts with respect to it, you can ask me. Do you have any doubts? Can you reply in the chat, guys? Any doubts with respect to it? So can you reply in the chat? Okay, so these are the different ways in which we can calculate the cost of equity. So next one we'll have the cost of debt. The cost of debt. So when we calculate the cost of debt, so there are different types of debt. What are the different types of debt? We have the cost of redeemable debt and irredeemable debt. So how will you calculate the cost of a redeemable debt? Redeemable debt means there will be an initial outflow, then you will get the returns in future. Okay, like from the perspective of an investor, you have to purchase the bond, then you will get the interest rate, and in the final year you will get a premium, or you will get redeemed, that will get redeemed at the par in accordance to the question. Okay, so in that scenario, how will you calculate the yield or the cost of debt of a redeemable debt? Yes, if it is a redeemable debt, we will calculate the yield using IRR. If it is irredeemable means we'll only get the interest. We'll only get the interest. So how will you calculate it? Is KD is equal to I, whatever the interest, I into 1 minus T, because we can get tax savings on interest, divided by the X interest price of that bond, the X interest market price of that bond. So KD is equal to I into 1 minus T by P0. Can you reply in the chat, guys? So these are the two different ways in which you can calculate the cost of debt. So the cost of debt portion is comparatively easy with respect to cost of equity. Okay. So apart from that, we have another type of debt, that is convertible debt. So how will you calculate the cost of convertible debt? How will you calculate the cost of convertible debt? So the convertible debt means, again, you have to calculate IRR as same as redeemable debt. The only difference is here the cash flows will be the market value in year 0, then the interest from year 1 till the date of redemption, and finally redemption value. Okay, so it will include the market value, the interest, and the redemption value. And literally we have to take the IRR of this cash flows. Is it clear, everyone? So when it comes to convertible bond, instead of redemption in cash, but since the convertible debt, there is a chance that the holder is having an option. Either he can convert into shares as well. So we need to check at the year end which one can give you a higher value. If you are converting into cash, let's say you are redeeming it at nominal value, so you will get 100 rupees per bond. But if you are converting into shares, you may get a 10 share or a 20 share per bond. So literally you have to calculate the value of that share price on that particular date. Maybe after 5 years, you have to predict the value of that number of shares that they have offered for every bond. So let's say if the conversion, that is what known as the conversion value. So if you convert it, then you will get the value. So then we need to check whichever is higher. So whether in the last year, the conversion value or redemption value, whichever is higher, on that basis, you have to calculate IRR. So if it is a redeemable debt, we have to straight away calculate the IRR. The cash flows will be the market value in year 0. Then year 1 to year end, that is till the redemption date, there will be interest. And in the final year, there is a redemption value. And if it is convertible bond, then there will be market value, then interest, and finally there will be conversion value. Conversion value means the number of shares that we can get per bond into the market value of that share. Is it clear, everyone? If you want me to explain any of this specifically, then I can do that. So we are just quickly going through that part. If you want me to do anything specifically, just let me know. So these are the 3 different types that can get tested. If you have any doubts related to any of this method, you can ask me. So in the case of finding the market price of a convertible bond, is that to choose higher? So that's what with respect to convertible bond, we have to find the redemption value as well as a conversion value. So conversion value means, let's say I will show you how to do the conversion value. So conversion value will be calculated as, assume that we have got 20 share per bond. So we need to multiply 20 shares into the market value per share, the market value per share. But in the question, they may give the current market price. We need to predict the market price at the date of redemption date. Maybe if the redemption is after 5 years, the question they will give the current market price, but we have to predict the future rate. So how will you predict it? It is the current market price into they might give the growth. So 1 plus G raised to, if the redemption is after 5 years, then raised to 5. If it is after 3 years, it is raised to 3. So like that, you have to predict the market price. You can predict the market price. So how to get the market value per share at the rate of redemption? You can use this formula, that is current market price into 1 plus growth in raised to n. So let's say if you're getting that value as 118, the conversion value is 118, and the question said that redemption, the loan can get redeemed at a premium of 10%. So what does it mean by it? Redemption at a premium of 10% is 100 plus a premium of 10% over it. It will be 110%. It will be 110. The value will be 110. The value will be 110. Isn't it? So here, which one is giving you a higher value here? Is it the conversion value or the redemption value? Which, if you redeem it in cash, you may get 110. But if you convert it into shares, you can get 20 shares, and multiplied by the market price, I assume that the price which is coming to the conversion value becomes 118. So which offer will you take there? We'll take 118, right? Because always as a holder, we will choose the higher option. Then we have to calculate the IRR of it. So the cost of debt is literally the yield. We are actually calculating the yield. Is it clear, everyone? Any other doubts with respect to the cost of debt calculation? Can you reply in the chat? Can you reply in the chat, guys? So once we calculate the cost of equity and cost of debt, literally you can calculate the WACC. So how will you calculate the WACC? The weightage of equity in the capital structure. That is, let's say if the equity is 60%, so 60% into the cost of equity plus the weightage of debt. I assume that it is 40% into cost of debt. So that's how we'll arrive at the WACC calculation. So once we find the cost of debt and cost of equity separately, then we have to take the weighted average. So how will you calculate the weighted average? We need to consider the proportion of debt in the overall capital structure, as well as the proportion of equity in the overall capital structure. So the answer will be weightage of equity multiplied plus weightage of debt multiplied by cost of debt. Is it clear, everyone? So that's how we'll calculate. The WACC. So the WACC calculation can be an important question. So almost like the NPV investment appraisal question, the WACC can get tested for almost 12 to 15 marks. So you may be asked to calculate the cost of debt, cost of equity, cost of preference shares, everything separately. Then we have to take the weightage as well. So how will you calculate? There is one more thing, that cost of preference shares. How will you calculate the cost of preference shares? Again, that's easy. It is the dividend divided by the P0, because the dividend for preference shares is always constant. So there is no specific methods. There is only one step to calculate preference shares cost of debt, cost of preference shares, which is D0 by P0, where D0 is the dividend and P0 is the share price. So D0 will be calculated as a percentage of nominal value. So it will be given in the question, a 4% preference shares or a 10% preference shares. So that percentage indicates the dividend rate. Okay. So dividend will be percentage, whatever the percentage multiplied by the nominal value. Then you will get the D0. The current dividend is equal to, there will be a X or Y percentage will be given. It will be given in the SOFP, a 4% preference shares or a 5% preference shares. So literally you have to take that percentage multiplied by the nominal value, then you will get the dividend. So D0 by P0, that's a formula to calculate the cost of preference shares. Is it clear, everyone? So you can expect a full-fledged question around 10 to 12 marks with respect to a WACC calculation. So please note that you remember this area. It's a it's a direct easy marks questions if you're properly learning the formulas. I hope there is no other doubts with respect to it. You can ask me if you have any doubts apart from that with respect to the WACC calculation. Any doubts, guys? Can you reply in the chat? Do you have any other doubts with respect to the WACC calculation? Okay, fine. So once the WACC calculation is over, we know that the WACC is getting calculated. The WACC is literally calculated using our existing capital structure. The WACC is getting calculated using our existing capital structure. WACC is calculated using existing capital structure. So there are limitations to WACC. There are limitations to WACC. That is, WACC can only be used. The WACC can only be used if. So can you give me a application? Can you give me one application of WACC where we apply this WACC? What's the use of WACC? WACC or cost of capital. Where will you use this cost of capital? Have you seen anywhere we are using cost of capital? The application of cost of capital. Where will you use this cost of capital? Can you reply in the chat? Yeah, for investment appraisal as well as for business valuation. Okay, for investment appraisal as well as for business valuation. When we are valuing a new company, we can use it for a target company valuation and all this stuff. So when we use this WACC, since the WACC is having certain limitations, what are the limitations? The WACC can be only used if the business risk of our company and the target company or the project which you are going to value will be same. The business risk should be same. What do you mean by BR? The BR indicates the business risk. Okay, so if the business risk of our company and the target company will be same, then the same way the financial risk of our company and the target company also should be the same. Okay, and size the project will be negligible. The size of the project should be negligible. When we are comparing it with our project or with our company, the project which we are targeting should be negligible in size. If these criteria are met, then we can use the WACC. We can use the existing capital structure. So since there are limitations to WACC, The existing WACC can be only used in these three scenarios. If the business risk of the company and the target company will be same, if FR, the financial risk of a company and target company will be same, or the size of the project will be negligible. Is it clear, guys? Can you reply in the chat? So these are the limitations of WACC. Even that can be tested as a theory marks. That will get tested as a theory part. Is it clear, everyone? Can you reply in the chat? Okay. So next part is with respect to calculation of risk adjusted WACC. So what do you mean by risk adjusted WACC? We know that since the WACC is having certain limitations, it cannot be used when the business risk is getting changed or the financial risk is getting changed. So the next one which we are going to discuss is about the situation where we can use the risk adjusted WACC. So what do you mean by risk adjusted WACC? If you felt like if there is a change in the business risk of our company with respect to the project which you are going to invest, in that scenario, we have to use the risk adjusted WACC. So how will you calculate the risk adjusted WACC? First of all, we'll calculate the business risk of our target company. So there is a formula for calculating the business risk. So business risk is equal to beta E, that is the systematic risk multiplied by VE divided by VE plus VD into 1 minus T. Okay. So whenever you have to calculate a risk adjusted WACC, first of all, you have to step one. That's the step one. Step one is to calculate the business risk of our target company. So this is the formula to calculate the business risk, that is BR. That's the business risk is equal to BE. That is a systematic risk multiplied by value of equity divided by value of equity plus value of debt into 1 minus T. Is it clear? So once here, in this particular situation, step one, the equity beta, the value of equity and the value of debt, everything that will be using of our target company, because we are using the inputs of the target company to calculate the business risk. Once we found this business risk, the next step is to, step number 2 is to calculate a new equity beta. We have to calculate a new equity beta using the new systematic risk, using the business risk that we have found out. So now we have found out the business risk of our company, target company. So business risk, or that business risk that we have found in step number 1. So we need to just rearrange that first equation. So if you rearrange it, how the equation will be, it will be business risk multiplied by value of equity plus value of debt into 1 minus T divided by value of equity. Okay. So this is how we'll calculate the new systematic risk of a company by adjusting for the business risk of our new project. That is step number 2. So now we got the new systematic risk. Now in step 3, we'll calculate the new cost of equity. We'll calculate the new cost of equity, that is RF plus the systematic risk which you have found out in step number 2 into RM minus RF. Is it clear? So these are the 3 different ways in which we can, 3 different steps that we can follow to calculate the risk adjusted WACC. This BR is equal to beta E into VE by VE plus VD into 1 minus T. That next one we have to calculate a new systematic risk, that is BR into VE plus VD into 1 minus T divided by VE. And last one is step number 3, that is cost of equity is equal to RF plus beta E into RM minus RF. Is it clear, everyone? So this is how we can calculate the risk adjusted WACC. So these are the main areas that we have to cover with respect to cost of capital. So we have revised the main formulas of cost of capital, and we have discussed about the risk adjusted WACC. So that's what in both situation we'll assume that there is no change in financial risk. If there is change in financial risk, we have to apply a model that we'll learn in AFO. It is not there in FO. We assume that the financial risk will not change on a substantially. If there is a change in business risk, how will you account for it? We have to find a risk adjusted WACC, and that risk adjusted WACC, this is how it will be calculated. Once we get the KE, we got the KE which is adjusted for the business risk of a new project, and then we will be using that KE to calculate a investment specific WACC. Because KD remains the same, everything will remain the same. You just need to calculate a new KE by adjusting for the business risk of a new project. Is it clear? Okay. Fine. So the next business discuss in the next class. Okay. The business valuation part, the business valuation and the risk management we'll discuss in the next class.